Greetings YouTube, Alan Lu back with another tier list video. This time, I've been seeing a lot of people go over their Majestic tier list, and I thought, why don't I do the same? I've had more time to sort of like digest the set, and even though like opinions have definitely changed, I expect my opinions to change like even more as like more time passes, we get to play more with the cards, but this is going to be how I feel about the cards currently. So yeah, like, comment, subscribe, all that good stuff. Definitely trying to put out more videos after the heavy hitters impressions kind of slowed down a bit because I just was thinking some video ideas, but yeah, I decided to come in with this one. So this tier list was made by Ichin, or Malzenith, as some of you may know him. And so I'm going to use his tiers as a heavy hit, happy hit, halfway hit, humdrum hit, and horrendous hit. So if you do S, A, B, C, D, for example, the top tier is what I think are strong cards and will be meta-relevant cards. The happy hit tier will be basically like just a step down from that. Halfway hit will be cards that I think are good but don't necessarily have that same meta-relevance at the moment. Humdrum hit would be cards that I see potentially having a use case but don't think are really quite there. And then horrendous hit are just the cards that I don't think anyone will really need in the meta. So let's just start going in order from this tier list. Send Packing. So Send Packing is a new disruptive brute card. It's basically a new like baby CNC. It's going to be very impactful. All three brutes can run it. So I'm just going to put this in the heavy hit tier. Pretty good, I would say. It's also quite important that the Arsenal card goes to hand. For example, against Azalea, even if they block 6, the Arsenal card will go to hand, or which is pretty impactful. That means they can't use Cobalt Cross Wraps. But against something like Guardian, sometimes they might Arsenal a blue that they don't want, and then if they block, they get that blue back into hand. So that's a potential downside. So there's upside and downside to the effect. But also banishing the card, giving you information on what that card is like really also another big plus for this card. Yellow 3 for 6 is like slightly underrated, but it has a really good on hit. So I'm giving this a heavy hit because I expect maybe even every brute to play this card. A yellow 6 with good text, blocks 3, is very impactful. Next up, we have Show No Mercy. So for this one, Rhinar Specialization, it's basically a slightly different Alpha Rampage. They fulfill similar roles in the deck. So overall, I think the card is good. I'm not too sure how well Rhinar will be able to utilize this. Because once again, it's a bit more of a combo card where like you want to intimidate more with either Beat Chest or like Barraging Beatdown to really get the big value from this effect of like semi-unblockable damage. Because even if you only intimidate 3 cards, even if they block with their last card, this will get +3, so that card is basically useless. So if you get a triple intimidate turn, including this card, you basically get to push through unblockable damage. But then the question becomes, what if they just didn't want to block anyways, and then they just throw back at you? But against like, Guardians or even Warriors or Victor and such, not being able to choose what cards you block with is pretty impactful. So I would give this a happy hit. Like, I would say it was a happy hit for sure. Cast Bones, this card is crazy in KO. Sometimes they'll go like Agility or a Quicken into like Bare Fangs or even Wild Ride for like a 6 go again, and you're not sure whether or not you want to commit to blocking that card, because what if they come in with a Swing Big next? What if they come in with a CNC next? So then maybe you hold back on blocks a bit, and then they just go Cast Bones, and their next turn is like absolutely gigantic. Even if you can force cards out of their hand, they realistically only need to keep 2 cards to get the value out of their Might tokens, or even 1 card and just swing Mandible Claw, right? So this card is definitely a heavy hit. Reckless Charge, opinion hasn't changed from my impressions video. I think this card is a meme card. I'm just going to put this right in the horrendous hit. Like, sure, you can run this in Blitz if you want to play KO and just like have a good time and maybe high roll somebody, but in terms of like meta relevance, I would just put that in horrendous hit. No Fear, I really like this card when it came out, but it's also quite clunky. You can only banish cards with 6 or more attacks specifically, so it's definitely more KO focused. In Rhinar and Levia, it's like a little bit awkward. So I'm not really sure. I'm gonna put this in the humdrum hit for now, because I don't really expect brute decks to like really be packing this. I think like Reinhardt can already have like a pretty good matchup into Bravo because of all the Intimidate. Kayo can definitely just, output more damage. So No Fear was definitely a brute card that seems very good at stopping things like Bravo or maybe even Azuri, but I think they can do mostly fine without it, and it clunks your hand. It's less consistent. It's a no block. It's red, so I'm gonna put it in Humdrum for now. Maybe it's really like a halfway hit, and it's like more of like a niche tech card that you run like a 1 or a 2 of type of thing. But for now, I'll just put it in Humdrum. Next up, we have Bet Big. I think this card is obviously extremely good in Betsy. It's one of her best cards, but I think as most people have sort of agreed with, is that Betsy's not really in a great spot right now. So I would put it in a halfway hit just because like I think the card will have more potential once Betsy maybe gets like a specialization weapon, or she gets a little bit more support in like future expansion slots or things like that. But like another thing about this tier list is that like I don't expect this tier list to like equate to like prices, for example, because like a card that doesn't see meta relevance now, it doesn't mean that the card is bad. It just means that it doesn't have meta relevance right now, but it might in the future. So I'm just kind of giving my personal thoughts on the card. It's not perfectly in a vacuum because obviously things are meta dependent. Like for example, if some deck comes out with crazy on hits, then brutes might run No Fear. But yeah, overall, these are just my like overall thoughts. Prime to Fight. I really like this card when I first saw it, but after thinking about it more, I just don't think it really makes the cut. If you control the Vigor this turn, 1 less to play. If you control the Might, this gets +1. So taking the tokens out of consideration, this is basically a 4 for 10, which is pretty good, but debilitates like a 4 for 10. Chokeslam in the right matchup can be like 4 for a lot. So this doesn't play into like the Disruption Guardian style. This is more like trying to get better rate. And when it lines up, it's great, but it's also conditional, so I don't really love it. So personally, I would probably put Prime to Fight in Humdrum hit. Maybe that's a hot take. That's okay. Golden Sun, this card is absolutely crazy. Victor is looking to be a really strong deck. I'm just going to put this right into the heavy hit. Victor, I think, will be very meta relevant, and this card is a 3 of in every Victor deck. So, yeah, moving on to Boast. I don't really expect this card to be good unless you play a very defensive Clash Victor deck, and even then it's like when you put Boast in your deck, you're lowering the consistency of your clashes, but the effect is quite strong even if you only win 1 clashes. Like a blue that blocks for 5, like eventually we'll be in a world where Anathos is gone and Victor can't play that, so he's only playing Miller's Grindstone. You don't need that 3 cost on each of your attacks, so that's something to consider. You can play more Clash cards like the blue block Clash cards, the 2 for 6s red that Clash for Vigor and Might when they block, so that can up the amount of clashes you're doing. Obviously, Test of Strength is very good in Victor. Test of Might and Vigor might see some play. Vigor maybe more so in Bravo, but overall, I don't think this card will really see too much play, but I don't think it's bad per se, so I'll put it in Humdrum. Moving on to Trounce. I think everyone can agree that in Victor, this card is absolutely crazy in the right matchups. It's a red block 3, so the downside is quite high. You can't Arsenal this card. It pitches for red. It doesn't pitch for Anathos, but I don't know if you'll run this in matchups where you're running Anathos. But in the right matchups, like against Ninja, against maybe even Dromai or Warrior, things like that, Victor blocking with this is just like draw a card, create a Might and a Vigor, which is pretty insane. Obviously, sometimes you'll lose the Clash. Even against decks where you're not likely to win the Clash, you probably side this out for something better. But I think this card is a very happy hit. I might even call it a heavy hit, honestly. Like Trounce in Victor is an insane combo that I'll give it a heavy hit. Blade Flurry is next. Target weapon attack is +2. I was high on this card when I first looked at it. I'm still high on this card. It goes into every dual wielding deck. It goes into Dory. Probably doesn't really fit into Bolton unless you're running Hatchet Bolton, which is just like not a great deck. But Dawnblade Dory can run this. Sai can run this. Dual-handed Olympia can run this, even though dual-handed Olympia isn't great right now. Overall, Olympia is not in a great spot, but like the main warrior decks like Kasai and Dory, Can definitely run this. Bolton is the outsider in this. Like, you can line it up with like a Lumina turn, but putting this in your deck just to combo with Lumina for 0 for 4 probably won't see play. But definitely enduring Kasai. So I will give this a very... I would give it a heavy hit. It's probably like one of the best warrior Majestics. So next up we have Shift the Tide of Battle. I was pretty impressed with this card when it came out, but then after thinking about it more, it just feels kind of like a slightly worse Glint, and it's yellow. In Kasai, I think maybe it can be good because it's a card that can give Go Again that's in yellow, which Kasai has the deck building restraints of needing yellow cards in her deck to activate her hero ability to make gold. But overall, one card for Go Again isn't great. Even Hit and Run lets you like extend turns potentially. Like, you could go Saber or Spoils of War, first Saber into Hit and Run into second Saber, and you can get like your +2 value or +3 if it's yellow or red Hit and Run. But this card, you're really only getting the Go Again. And sure, if you deal damage, you make an agility, which is pretty good. But in Dual Wield Warrior, you're kind of making... You have a lot of sources of Go Again. You're not really leaning too much into that agility game plan. So I'm not super impressed with this card. Maybe in Bolton, this might see like some fringe play, but I kind of doubt it. I mean, it's a yellow. Overall, I think it's a pretty mid card. So Humdrum Hit are cards that I think are like pretty mid. Halfway Hit is like cards that I think are good but don't have meta relevance, and then Heavy and Happy Hit obviously are the good cards. Up the ante. So I think this card is really great. It's a blue with really high upside. Even if you play it for 0, you get to pick one thing, like even a +1 if the attack is wagering, or you wager a gold, you make 2 gold. You wager an agility, you make agility plus gold with Victor, Olympia, etc. If you have 1 extra resource floating, that's better. You can wager another thing and maybe give it +2. 2 floating, 3 floating, etc. Just like, I think just this being a blue 3 block with a lot of flexibility and upside, I really like the card, but Olympia's not in a great spot. So I would put this in the halfway hit. Basically in the same situation as Betsy. Commanding Performance is next. I still think this card is really good, but it's still very specific to certain matchups. So depending on how your warrior deck slants, like if you're more aggressive, you run a tighter resource curve, this card will help you into like the Guardian matchups, for example, or the Brute matchups. Maybe not Brute if Brute doesn't want to block, but usually Reinhardt will want to block a bit. But yeah, any attack action heavy deck that wants to block this card is absolutely amazing. But that's still like a small percentage of the meta. Actually, no, that's not a small percentage of the meta. That's a small percentage of heroes. It depends how much share of the meta game those types of decks will be. And so this card is more meta relevant, I would say. Like, it doesn't help you race, for example, against certain decks, but I think most people are expecting the meta to shift away towards like Ninja and decks that like are more aggressive and race. So overall, I think this card is still really good, but I would probably give it a happy hit. Like, I think I would be happier pulling a Blade Flurry, just because Blade Flurry is just like a main board card, whereas Commanding Performance is more of a sideboard card. But if you're running 3 of both in every single warrior deck, then they're both just as necessary, right? Up next, Raise an Army. I think obviously this is one of Kasai's big gold payoff cards. It's really important to our game plan versus slower decks. I would just call this straight up a heavy hit. You probably run 2 or 3 of in every Kasai deck, no matter what. So yeah. Nothing much more to say there. There is a bling version, so maybe that makes the regular Majestic less valuable. I don't know. Talk a big game. I think this card's a meme. It's like gambling. You make this many Might tokens. I think it's a fun card. I don't think it's very good. Runner. I'm kind of in between heavy hit and happy hit for this one because it probably goes into basically every Brute deck. It's a 2 for 6, 3 block with upside, with agility. Not much more you could really ask for. So yeah, you know what? Let's give it heavy hit. Moving on, we have Double Down. I think this card is good. It's probably going to see a lot of more play in Olympia because Olympia is making the most gold. You could run this in Kasai, but Kasai is not really wagering. So Double Down is very much an Olympia card. So I think the card is good. So I'll give it a halfway hit. It just doesn't have the meta relevance right now. Moving on to Nasty Surprise. This card, very situational. I highly doubt this will see any play, to be perfectly honest. Like you could run it in Ninja, like Katsu. It's a 0 for 2, 3 block. So there's not much downside there. Like you can't Breaking Scales it, or you can't Ancestral it, and that might make the difference in like 1 or 2% of games. So how often is this effect happening for you? Like if you Arsenal this and you get CNC'd, that's great, but I don't know. I'm just not a huge fan of this card, really. And even then, the Vigor token can be a little awkward for Katsu, because that means you can't pitch into Kodachi on your first one. So that means you have to play an attack as your first thing. And if you don't have a Surging Strike, then that can make things a little awkward. So, yeah, not a huge fan of this card. Pay up. I think this card's also really funny. Defending hero controls a gold. This gets overpower. When this hits, gain a control of a gold token they control. If you don't, deal 1 damage to them. So this will be good against Olympia or Kasai or even Victor maybe. But like Victor has a ton of armor. Kasai has a ton of armor. Even Olympia has a good amount of armor. So then it's like, what is this really doing? It's a 3 for 6 red, and it has like marginal upside. So I think this is a horrendous hit, unfortunately. Ripple Away, I think this card's pretty interesting. If an action card would create 1 or more tokens this turn, instead it creates that many, -1 of each of those tokens. So, like maybe you're teching against Kayo and they play Cast Bones and they reveal, 6 powers, you Ripple Away and they make 1 less, which is a little awkward. I don't really see enough upside for this card's effect to discard the whole card. Maybe there's like other effects I'm thinking of that I'm not. Maybe in a world where Vincent becomes like a meta deck, you can play this to like really stuff their turn if they're planning to Rune Gate a specific card. But yeah, I'm not really sure how that interaction even works. Like if they have Rune Blood incantation that ticks down at start of turn, I believe. Can you Ripple Away? No, no one has priority at start of turn, right? So can you? I don't know. I think right now this card really doesn't have much relevance, if at all. There might be some niche scenarios where it does, and I'm trying to think of that, but I'm not super keen on it. Next card up is Standing Order. I think this card's really cool. It provides a lot of flexibility. It's just everything I want in a Flesh and Blood card, but at the same time, I can't imagine myself running this card in many decks. Like if Dromai is a big issue for your deck, you can run this as an extra popper. That's also a 0 for 4 if you're like a more red line aggro deck, I guess. I don't know. I think the card is really cool. It's really flexible, but I'm gonna put it in halfway hit, I guess. Like I think the card is good, but I don't think it really has meta relevance right now. But I'm maybe I even give it a humdrum hit, because at least these cards like the Betsy and Olympia cards are like, eventually when they get more support, then they can see play and have a place in the meta. Standing Order is like more niche. I'm not really quite sure where it will be in the meta, if at all. But I do think it's a little better than these other cards. So I'll give it halfway. Why not? After that, we have Tenacity. Amazing card in Fi, especially against decks that want to block. A lot of times when they pop off on their Link's turn, to play around the Salt the Wound, you start blocking all their little things. But now when you start blocking all their little things, they can come in with Tenacity. But if you don't block, they come in with Salt the Wound. So then it gets really awkward. I think the way to play around this is that on Fi's like big pop-off turn, you don't want to block early, because if they hit early, they can commit their Links to get either Tenacity or Salt the Wound. But sometimes they might want to save it until later to really see how you end up blocking that turn. If you can confidently block out the rest of Fi's attacks, then they can't plop Links, so then they can't fetch either. So maybe that's the way to go. But they'll have more opportunities to pop Links. But on the turn that's like, their clear Art of War, Spreading Flames turn, and they really want to push a ton of damage, then you can sort of like maybe let the early few leak a bit, and then maybe start blocking out. If you can map out their turn and think that you can block out the rest, then they can't pop Links anymore. Because if they pop Links early and they get Salt the Wound, then you start blocking. If they pop Links early and they get Tenacity, you block not as much. It's hard because even if you don't want to block against a tenacity turn, on their big pop off turn, you want to block kind of no matter what. So card is just good. Definitely a happy hit. Fi's, I rated Fi pretty high in my tier list. A lot of people expect him to go down a bit. I can understand that, and I think that, you know, more decks are coming out that are unfavorable for Fi, but Fi is still very simple, straightforward, proactive, consistent. So that's why I rated him so high, but I can definitely see him moving down in the meta share as time goes on. Next up, Seduce Secrets. Someone in the comments of my my impressions video talked about how, you know, this could be used for Kasai. You draw a card, so that means your swords are free, and it's a yellow, so that helps with your hero ability. But being a 0 block that doesn't provide that much value, and you have to arsenal it, I think it just has too much downside. I think this is a horrendous hit. Graven Call. This card's interesting. It gives assassins sort of a different playstyle where you can generate a lot of silver, and then you can bring back your dagger, and then maybe this becomes, you know, a 2-for-2 go again, or a 2-for-3 go again, or a 2-for-4 go again. But for the most part, when I play against assassin, or I've seen assassins play, you don't get to make that much silver in a game, even if you're Arachne. And your other effects are also really good, like your boots that give go again, or your helmet that banishes 2 cards, or an extra card. So I don't love this card. Honestly, I might even put it in horrendous, but I feel like people would flame me too hard if I did that, so I'll put it in humdrum. You know what? No, I'll put it in horrendous hit. I don't think this card will see play. Like, you can build your deck in a way to play around Graven Call, but I think that makes the deck arguably worse than where Arachne or Azuri is currently. So that is what it is. Coercive Tendency. I think this Arachne reaction is really good. Like, it's Azuri gets to play her stealth blues, and she gets to arsenal them and have, like, basically a lot of blues that she can run. Arachne doesn't have that same sort of, what's the word? Upside to his hero ability. So having this as one of your blues is really good. It's a blue with upside. You get to look at the top 3, put them back in any order, and if you complete a contract, your assassin attacks get go again this combat chain. It's an attack reaction. You know, you come in with Plunder the Poor, they don't block, you Coercive Tendency, and you get to maybe come in for 0-for-4, for 0-for-4, or you have a Tunic, you come in for 1-for-5, things like that. So I think this card's really cool. But unfortunately, I don't think Arachne will have much space in the meta, but I will put it in the halfway hit card, because I think at its core, this card is better than these ones below it, but it just doesn't have the sort of meta relevancy to see play. Like, for example, these humdrum hit cards, like the decks they can go in are meta relevant, but me personally, I don't think they should go in. Prime to Fight could go in Victor or Bravo or Betsy, but I don't think it should. Same with Bose. Shift the Tide of Battle for Warrior, same thing. No Fear. Maybe No Fear should go up a bit. I do think it's a little better than the other ones. Anyways, Ancestral Harmony. This card's interesting. Your attacks with combo get +1 this turn, banish to the top card. If it has combo, you may play it this turn. So when I see this card, I really want to play my stupid, you know, even bigger than that, Rushing River, Torrent of Tempo, Flood of Force deck. But that deck just has so much inconsistency. Like, you play Flood of Force, you reveal the top card, it's not combo, it's so bad. You would just want to cry. But I think this card is interesting. I think this card is good. Will it see play in current Katsu decks? I'm not sure. Like, is it a straight upgrade from a, you know, not Winds of Eternity. Winds of Eternity is pretty important. That's the other one. Lord of Winds also pretty important. Decks don't even play Fine Center anymore. Stab Wounds, I guess. Is that the Blue Majestic? Yeah. Is this an upgrade over Stab Wounds? Maybe, maybe not. So I think the card is good, but is it better than what Katsu currently has in his blues? Like, you still play the Blue Whelmings, you still play the Lord of Winds, the Winds of Eternity. So I'm going to put this in the halfway hit, just because I think the card is good, but I'm not quite sure it'll see play. But I think it also, you know, lets Katsu, you know, potentially play into a different style of deck, which I think is fun. So maybe that's my personal bias, but next up, we have the Evo Magneto. If you have base arms equipped, transform. When this defends, you may destroy a card onto it. If you do, gain control of target item with cost 0 or 1. I don't really love all these like mech mirror cards, because it's like mech is only a small portion of the meta, and you really just want to be siding for other matchups for the most part if you're a mech deck. So I think this card is pretty bad. It's also not even a base, so it's like this is your final Evo potentially. 0 cost or 1 cost items. Like if you're playing against Dash.io, you can steal like a Dissolving Shield or something like that. I don't love this card. I'm honestly just going to put this in Horrendous Hit. Judge, Jury, Executioner. I think this card's really good. It probably will be a one of because it's legendary in every Azalea deck. So I will put this in the heavy hit. Also, I feel like just because it's legendary, it means it will likely be shorter printed compared to other expansion slot cards. I don't know if that's true, actually, because like they did that with Gorg Tome back in Crucible of War, where since it was a legendary, they printed less because you don't need a playset in a deck. So I don't know. Like maybe this card will be more expensive because like there's less of them in multiple cases, but I have no idea. Reel in. Look at the top X+1 cards of your deck. Choose up to 4 traps. Reveal them. Put them into your hand. Then shuffle. Reload. If you play this for 0, you get to look at 1 card. You pitch a blue and play this. You get to look at the top 4 cards of your deck. I don't know. I'm gonna put this one in Humdrum. Like maybe this is important for Riptide, so it's like a halfway hit. But even like in a super trap based Riptide, it's like I don't know. I'm just gonna put it in Humdrum because maybe it has some play. But I think most people that play like a trap mid-range / fatigue style Riptide are kind of setting themselves up for failure, unfortunately. Like, yes, I think it's very base that you're playing a bad hero, but it's also, it is what it is. Sonata Galaxia. I think this card's really good in Vinset. I think this card's really good in OTK Viserai, as John has told me. But it's not as good in like an aggro Viserai, because like, even if you have 2 rune chance, you play this, you get a Rune Blood incantation, that's fine. It's not amazing for Viserai if you're being more aggressive. In Vinset, obviously, it's very good. I would probably put this in the halfway hit. Actually, I might even put this in the happy hit, just because I feel like this card will see play in both of the Rune Blades, but they're not very good right now. I mean, to be fair, that's where I put all these halfway hit cards, so I'm going to put it back down, because like Bet Big and Up the Ante, I think, are also great cards, but they're also in the halfway hit section. Axiom Arc, I talked about how I don't know what the pool is for what Arcane Wizard actions are. So if this is, potentially an upgrade, maybe that's, what, I'm just going to look it up right now. Cards, let's sort by none, cost is 1 or less, and then it will be a blue pitch and class wizard action card. Axiom Arc, Aether Dart. Icebind is elemental. Frosting is ice. Anything else? Prognosticate. Deal 1 damage. Deal 1 arcane damage to target hero. Deal 1 arcane damage to each opposing hero. Okay, so in UPF, this card's amazing. In CC, I don't think this matters at all because this is a card. This is a card. This is a card. So you have enough 0 for 1s. So yeah, Prognosticate, unfortunately, not, or Axiom Arc, probably a horrendous hit in my opinion. This is a CC based tier list. I think the card, obviously, if you're playing UPF, is amazing. So if it's UPF, it's a happy hit. But if it's not, then it's not. Dissolve Reality. Let's see. Dissolve. Each hero puts all cards in their arsenal on bottom of their deck and creates a ponder token. So this card's weird because, like, even if you're not playing against Ranger, I mean, Lexi's gone, right? But even if you're playing against any deck, they have an arsenal and you don't. You can just play this. They lose their arsenal and you both get ponders. So I honestly don't think this card is that bad. But will it see play? I have no idea. It's a yellow 3-block. I'll just call it Humdrum because I'm not sure again. Luminaris, I think this is probably a happy hit. It's going to be a staple for Prism. But Prism's sort of meta relevance, I have no idea. She can either be really good if she can fit like both the Luminaris and the Iris plan into her deck, so she can play against aggro decks and Guardian decks. But maybe you can just lean more into the Aura plan, because it seems like there's going to be less aggressive decks in the meta. But then if that's the case, do you even run Luminaris? Yes, you still do, because you still need that sort of sideboard plan for faster decks that you just want to beat down. Like against Brute or Guardian, you're not going to play a Luminaris game plan, because then everything will just get popped. Your Angels will die. You probably get fatigued. So maybe where Prism is supposed to be is a more Iris-based deck with Luminaris as a sideboard card if you run into one of your bad quote-unquote aggro matchups. Let me just look over this again to see if I would change anything. Probably not. I think the cards I'm most iffy about in this tier list are like No Fear. I think No Fear is a really good card, but it's also like pretty clunky, so I don't know. Maybe it's more of like a halfway hit. All these horrendous hits I'm pretty fine about. Halfway hits, mostly fine about. Happy hits and the heavy hits. So this is probably my yep. I probably wouldn't change anything. I'm not going to order it because it's like, what's the point at that point? They're all just pretty good cards. They go in different decks. They have different meta relevance. So this was my final tier list. Please like, comment, subscribe. You can go ahead and flame me if I put a card that you absolutely love in the horrendous hit. But, it's just my thoughts. I am happy to be wrong. If the Hartford comes up and the Battle Hardened and one of the top 8 decks plays any of these cards in the bottom 2 tiers, I'll eat my words. That's fine. Like Prime to Fight, I can definitely see players running this, and it's not like that big of a downgrade. But in my personal opinion, I just don't think the card is ideal. Same for Shift the Tide of Battle. Maybe I can definitely see people running it. I don't think it's a bad card, but once again, probably not ideal. No Fear, etc. Boast, Reel In, Dissolve Reality, all that jazz. Yep, that was all from me. Let me know what kind of other videos you guys want to see. And question of the video. Let's think of one. What region or area or class do you think we're going to see in next Flesh and Blood set? Now that Heavy Hitters is kind of like out and we're all digesting it. Personally, I think we're going to see like a more arcane based set next, just because Icelander's been gone for a little bit. So people probably want a little more there. Runeblades have been in a pretty bad spot for a while now, so maybe they get some love there in a more arcane focused set. Like, I think they talked about like a pure arcane set, but I don't know if they're actually going to do that, or if it's going to be like every hero has access to arcane type of thing. So yep, that was all from me, and see you guys next time.